Hello everyone. Today I want to share a story with you. A story that haunts me to this very day. It is a story about how a single moment of ignorance can cost an entire lifetime of regret. I am sharing this because I know, somewhere out there, in your own backyards, at your own family gatherings, this same tragedy could happen if you do not know the signs. The main character of our story is my Uncle Mike, 55 years old, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. Uncle Mike was a long-haul truck driver. He spent his life on the open road, moving heavy loads from coast to coast. He was the kind of guy who never went to the doctor. He would always say to me, "Listen, kid, I am built like a Ford truck, tough and reliable. I do not need no pills to keep me running." He was the life of the party, the loudest laugh in the room, and in the eyes of his wife and 3 kids, he was invincible. He was their rock, their protector, the man who could fix anything with a wrench and a smile. It all happened last summer, on the 4th of July weekend. The heat was unbearable that day. The weatherman said it was over 100 degrees in the shade. But that did not stop Uncle Mike from firing up the grill in the backyard. He was standing there, flipping burgers, sweat dripping down his face, a cold beer in one hand and a spatula in the other. The smell of charcoal and grilled meat filled the air. Kids were running around the yard with sparklers, and the country music was playing loud on the stereo. It was the perfect picture of the American dream, a happy family celebrating together. Uncle Mike was in high spirits, joking with his buddies, talking about his next big trip to Arizona. He looked happy, he looked strong, he looked like he had 50 more years to live. But then, tragedy struck in the blink of an eye. Just as Uncle Mike raised his beer to propose a toast, his hand suddenly gave out. The glass bottle slipped from his grip, smashing onto the concrete patio, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Beer foamed up around his boots. Everyone went silent for a second. His buddy, a guy named Steve, laughed and said, "Whoa there, Mike, slow down on the bruise. Buddy, it is only 2 o'clock." Uncle Mike looked confused. He stared at his hand like it did not belong to him anymore. He tried to laugh it off. He tried to say, "I am fine, just a slippery bottle." But when he opened his mouth, no words came out. Only a strange, gurgling sound, like he was trying to talk underwater. Air. That was all he could manage. I was standing right there, holding a plate of potato salad, and I saw his face change. It was terrifying. The right side of his face just collapsed. His eyelid drooped down. The corner of his mouth sagged like melting wax. He tried to smile to reassure his wife, Aunt Sarah, but only the left side of his face moved. It looked like a twisted, broken mask. But here is where the real nightmare began. The mistake that I wish I could go back in time to stop. His friends, seeing him stumble and slur his words, they thought he was just drunk, or maybe suffering from heat exhaustion. One of them shouted, "He is overheating. Get him some water, quick." Steve grabbed a bottle of cold water and tried to force it into Uncle Mike's mouth. "Drink up, Mike. You gotta hydrate, man. Swallow it down." Uncle Mike was panicking. His eyes were wide with terror. He could not swallow. The muscles in his throat were paralyzed. The water just spilled out of the side of his mouth, soaking his shirt, and some of it went straight into his windpipe. He started coughing, a wet, hacking cough, gasping for air. His face turned red, then a shade of purple. Instead of calling 911 immediately, everyone was trying to play doctor. Someone said, "Let him sit down. Put his head between his knees, he just needs to catch his breath." Someone else yelled, "No, Splash some cold water on his face. Wake him up. They were shaking him, patting his back, trying to force him to snap out of it. They were wasting precious seconds, precious minutes. I was just a college kid back then. I did not know much about medicine, but I had a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I looked at Aunt Sarah. She was frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. She screamed, "Mike, Mike, what is wrong with you? Say something." But Uncle Mike began to slump over in the lawn chair, his heavy body sliding to the side, his right arm dangling uselessly like a dead weight. This was the conflict between ignorance and reality. Inside Uncle Mike's brain, a massive clot had blocked a major artery. Millions of brain cells were dying every single minute. His brain was starving for oxygen, screaming for help. But on the outside, his friends were treating him for a hangover or heat stroke. They were laughing nervously, saying, "He will be fine in a minute, just give him some air." It felt like time had stopped. Every tick of the clock was a hammer blow to his chances of recovery. I remember looking at his eyes, those blue eyes that were usually so full of life. They looked trapped. He was in there, screaming, begging for us to stop shaking him, begging for us to get real help. But he was locked inside a body that would not obey him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes, I could not take it anymore. I saw him start to lose consciousness, his breathing becoming shallow and ragged. I dropped my plate and ran over to him. I grabbed Steve's arm and pulled him away. "Stop it," I yelled, my voice cracking. "Stop giving him water. Look at his face. Look at his arm. This is not heat stroke. This is not the beer." Everyone stopped and looked at me. The music was still playing, a cheerful country song that felt completely wrong for this horror show. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so hard I could barely unlock the screen. I dialed 911. "Emergency, please help. I think my uncle is having a stroke." The operator's voice was calm, but urgent. "Is he breathing? Is he conscious? Do not give him anything to eat or drink. Keep him still." I repeated her words to the group. "Do not give him water. Put him on his side. Now." Aunt Sarah collapsed onto the grass beside him, holding his good hand, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mike, please, stay with me, do not leave me." The sound of the ambulance siren in the distance was the only hope we had left. But as I looked at Uncle Mike's gray face, I wondered, was it too late? Had we wasted the golden hour trying to force-feed water to a dying man? That 4th of July, the fireworks never went off at our house. Instead, we watched the flashing red lights of the ambulance fade into the night, taking with them the man we all loved, and leaving us with a silence so heavy, it felt like it would crush us. And that was just the beginning of the battle. The real war, for his life and his dignity, was about to be fought inside the cold, white walls of the hospital. Let me tell you, what happened next was even more heartbreaking. I drove Aunt Sarah to the hospital following the ambulance. She did not say a word the entire ride. She just stared out the window, clutching her purse so tight her knuckles turned white. The red lights of the ambulance ahead of us were cutting through the darkness, flashing like a warning signal that we had ignored for too long. When we arrived at the emergency room, it was chaos. They had already wheeled Uncle Mike into the trauma bay. I could hear the overhead speakers announcing, "Code stroke. Trauma bay 1. Code stroke. Trauma bay 1. That announcement sent a chill down my spine. It sounded so mechanical, so cold, but it meant that a team of strangers was currently fighting to keep my uncle's heart beating. A nurse stopped us at the double doors. "Family needs to wait here," she said firmly but kindly. Aunt Sarah tried to argue. But he is my husband. He needs me. The nurse shook her head. Ma'am, the doctors are working on him right now. We need clear space. Please, have a seat in the waiting area. The doctor will come out as soon as we have the CT scan results. We sat in that waiting room for what felt like hours. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. The fluorescent lights were humming. A low, buzzing sound that seemed to drill right into my skull. Every time the automatic doors opened, Aunt Sarah would jump up, hoping for news, only to sink back down when it was just another nurse or a different family member. Finally, a doctor in blue scrubs came out. He looked young, but his eyes were tired. He walked straight over to us. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked. Aunt Sarah nodded, too scared to speak. "I am Dr. Evans, the neurologist on call. We have performed a CT scan of your husband's brain. I need you to listen to me very carefully because we do not have much time." He pulled up an image on a tablet. It showed a black and white picture of a brain, but there was a large, bright white spot on the left side. "This is a massive hemorrhagic stroke," Dr. Evans explained, his voice grave. "A blood vessel deep inside his brain has burst. The bleeding is putting immense pressure on his brain tissue. It is crushing the centers that control his movement and his speech." Then, the doctor asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Miller, did anyone give him water or food after he collapsed?" Aunt Sarah looked at me, then back at the doctor. "Yes, our friend. He thought Mike was dehydrated. He gave him a bottle of water. Mike tried to drink it, but he choked a little." "Why? Is that bad?" The doctor sighed, closing his eyes for a brief second. "It is very serious. Because his swallowing muscles were paralyzed by the stroke, the water went straight into his lungs. He now has what we call aspiration pneumonia on top of the brain bleed. His oxygen levels are dropping because his lungs are filled with fluid. This complicates everything." I felt a knot of guilt tighten in my stomach. If only I had known. If only I had stopped Steve sooner. We thought we were helping, but we were actually drowning him. "So, what can we do?" Aunt Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to operate," the doctor said. "We need to perform a craniectomy. Basically, we have to remove a piece of his skull to give the brain room to swell. If we do not, the pressure will kill him before morning. But I have to be honest with you, Mrs. Miller, the surgery is extremely risky. There is a 30% chance he will not make it off the table. And even if he survives, the damage to his brain is significant. He may never walk or talk again." The room spun. A 30% chance of death. And a high chance of permanent disability. The doctor held out a clipboard with a consent form. "I need your signature. We need to go to the OR right now." Aunt Sarah took the pen. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely write. She looked at the paper, which was basically a permission slip for them to cut open her husband's head. "Save him," she choked out. "Just save him, please. I do not care if he cannot walk. I just want him alive." She signed the paper. That signature felt like the heaviest thing she ever did. As soon as the doctor left, the waiting began again. But this time, it was worse. Now we knew he was under the knife. We knew they were sawing through bone, trying to stop a river of blood inside his head. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. The waiting room emptied out until it was just us and the humming lights. I watched the clock on the wall. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second was a heartbeat. Each minute was a prayer. I started thinking about the beer bottle smashing on the patio. I thought about Uncle Mike's laugh. I thought about the unfinished burgers on the grill. Life changes so fast, does it not? One minute you are the king of the barbecue. The next you are a body on a metal table, fighting for a single breath. At 3 a.m., the double doors swung open again. Dr. Evans walked out. He had changed his scrub cap, and there were small spots of blood on his shoes. He pulled his mask down. His face was unreadable. Aunt Sarah stood up, her legs shaking. "Doctor? Is he?" The doctor took a deep breath. "He is alive, Mrs. Miller. The surgery went as planned. We stopped the bleeding and relieved the pressure." We both let out a breath we didn't know we were holding. "But," the doctor continued, raising a hand, "he is in a coma. We have him on a ventilator to breathe for him because of the pneumonia from the water aspiration. The next 48 hours are critical. If the swelling goes down, he might wake up. If it does not." He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. We were allowed to see him for 5 minutes before they moved him to the ICU. Walking into that recovery room was like walking into a nightmare. Uncle Mike, the strongest man I knew, looked so small. His head was wrapped in thick white bandages. His face was swollen and bruised. There was a tube down his throat, taped to his mouth. A machine was breathing for him, hissing and clicking rhythmically. Wires were everywhere. Aunt Sarah touched his hand, carefully avoiding the IV lines. "I am here, Mike," she whispered. "I am here." But there was no squeeze back. No movement. Just the steady beep, beep, beep of the monitor. I looked at the monitor showing his vitals. I saw the numbers flashing. And I realized that the uncle I knew, the loud, funny, indestructible truck driver, was gone. Whatever came back from this, if anything came back, would be different. And the guilt of that water bottle, of that wasted time, weighed on me like a tombstone. We sat by his bedside as the sun came up. The 4th of July was over. The fireworks were finished. But for Uncle Mike, the fight had just begun. Little did we know, the hardest part was not the surgery. The hardest part was going to be the silence. The silence of a man who used to have so much to say, now trapped in a prison of his own body. The intensive care unit, or the ICU, is a place where time does not seem to exist. There is no day, there is no night. There is only the constant hum of the air conditioning, the smell of strong disinfectant that burns your nose, and the relentless rhythm of the machines. Beep, whoosh, click. Beep, whoosh, click. That sound became the soundtrack of our lives for the next 5 days. I watched Aunt Sarah age 10 years in that single week. She refused to leave Uncle Mike's side. She slept in a hard, plastic recliner chair in the corner of the room, curled up under a thin hospital blanket. Every time a nurse came in to check the IV bags or empty the catheter, Aunt Sarah would jerk awake, eyes wide with panic, asking, "Is he okay? Did he move?" The nurses were kind. They were angels in comfortable shoes. But they could not give us the answers we desperate wanted. The doctor had warned us about the swelling, but the real enemy turned out to be the pneumonia. Remember the water bottle? The water that his friends forced down his throat when he first collapsed? That water was now wreaking havoc in his lungs. Because his immune system was so weak from the stroke and the surgery, the fluid in his lungs had turned into a severe infection. Uncle Mike was running a fever of 103 degrees. His body was fighting a war on 2 fronts, one in his brain, and one in his chest. Dr. Evans told us plainly, if we had not dealt with the aspiration, he might have woken up 2 days ago. Now, we have to keep him sedated longer to let his lungs heal. It is a waiting game. The guilt I felt was crushing. Every time I looked at the ventilator tube taped to his mouth, I thought about that plastic water bottle. We thought we were saving him, but we were poisoning him. It is a lesson that is etched into my soul. Good intentions without knowledge can be deadly. Finally, on the morning of the 6th day, the fever broke. The doctors decided it was time to lower the sedation. They wanted to see if there was anyone still home inside that battered body. They turned down the propofol drip. We stood around the bed, holding our breath. Aunt Sarah was holding his left hand, rubbing his thumb gently. "Mike," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Mike, honey, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Come back to us." Nothing happened for the first hour. Then, I saw it. A twitch. His left eyelid fluttered, then the right one. Slowly, painfully, Uncle Mike opened his eyes. But they were not the eyes I remembered. They were bloodshot, glassy, and filled with a profound confusion. He blinked rapidly, trying to focus on the bright lights above him. He looked at the ceiling, then he looked at the tube coming out of his mouth, and panic set in. The heart monitor started racing. Beep 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 beep. He tried to sit up, but his body would not obey. He tried to reach for the tube with his right hand, the hand he used to shift gears, the hand he used to flip burgers. But the right hand lay dead on the sheet. It did not move an inch. He looked at it, confused. He sent the command from his brain. Move, but the wire was cut. The connection was gone. Terrified, he tried to lift his left hand, and it shot up, grabbing at the tube in his throat, trying to rip it out. "No, Mike, no," Aunt Sarah cried out, grabbing his wrist. "You cannot touch that. You need that to breathe." The nurses rushed in. "He is fighting the vent. We need to restrain him." They used soft Velcro straps to tie his good hand to the bedrail. Uncle Mike thrashed against the restraints. He was making muffled noises around the tube. MMMPH. Gah. His eyes were wild, darting from Aunt Sarah to me, pleading. He wanted to scream. He wanted to ask, "What happened? Why can't I move? Why am I tied up?" It took 2 hours to calm him down. Later that afternoon, the respiratory therapist decided he was breathing strong enough on his own to remove the tube. This was the moment of truth. We would finally know if he could speak. They deflated the cuff and pulled the long plastic tube out of his throat. Uncle Mike gagged, coughed violently, his face turning red. The nurse put an oxygen mask over his nose. "Take deep breaths, Mr. Miller. Cough it out." When the coughing subsided, Aunt Sarah leaned in close. "Mike, can you speak? Tell me you are okay." Uncle Mike looked at her. He opened his mouth. His lips moved. He took a breath to form words. We leaned in, desperate to hear his voice. D. He frowned. He tried again. He knew what he wanted to say. In his head, the sentence was probably perfect. "I love you, Sarah," or, "My head hurts." But the bridge between his brain and his mouth had been blown up. Do, da, ma, ga. Gibberish. Complete nonsense. He stopped. He looked at Aunt Sarah with a look of pure horror. He tried again, louder this time, frustrated. "No, I." He could say, "No," and "I." But nothing else. He pointed at his paralyzed leg with his good hand, looking at me, his eyes asking, "Fix it. Fix this." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "I cannot. Uncle Mike, I am sorry." Dr. Evans came in later to explain. He has what we call global aphasia. The stroke destroyed the language center in the left side of his brain. He can understand some of what we say, but he cannot express himself. And the paralysis on the right side, that is hemiplegia. It is likely permanent. Uncle Mike heard him. He understood enough. The man who was never sick, the man who laughed the loudest, turned his head away from us. He stared at the blank white wall. And for the first time in my life, I saw my Uncle Mike cry. Not a loud sob, just silent tears leaking out of the corners of his eyes, running down into his ears. He was trapped, a prisoner in his own broken body. The barbecue, the beer, the heat, the water bottle. It all led to this. A strong man reduced to a silent baby, tied to a bed, unable to tell his wife he loved her. But the cruelest part was yet to come. As the days turned into weeks, we realized that saving his life was just the beginning. The real tragedy was not the stroke itself, but the life that came after it. The financial ruin, the loss of dignity, and the heavy burden that fell on Aunt Sarah's shoulders. Let me tell you about the day he came home, and the reality of living with a ghost in the house. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with me. We have talked about the collapse, the surgery, and the silent scream in the ICU. But now, I want to take you to the place where the real heart of this tragedy beats. Home. They say, home is where the heart is, but for Uncle Mike, home became a reminder of everything he had lost. 3 weeks after the surgery, the insurance company decided that Uncle Mike was stable enough to be discharged. That is the cruel reality of the American healthcare system. They do not send you home because you are healed. They send you home because your coverage has run out. I remember the day we brought him back. It should have been a celebration. But as I pulled the car into the driveway, Uncle Mike started to cry. He was looking at his beloved Kenworth truck parked in the side yard. That truck was his pride and joy. It was his freedom. It was how he put food on the table for 30 years. Now, it sat there, covered in a thin layer of dust and pollen. He knew, and we knew, he would never climb into that cab again. He would never feel the rumble of the engine or see the sunset over the Arizona desert. He was no longer a driver. He was a passenger in his own life. We had to install a wooden ramp over the front steps because his wheelchair could not handle the stairs. Watching 4 grown men, myself included, struggle to push his heavy, limp body up that ramp was humiliating for him. He used to be the one carrying the heavy loads. Now, he was the load. Inside the house, everything had changed. The living room was no longer a place to relax. It was a makeshift hospital room. A hospital bed took up the space where the coffee table used to be. Boxes of adult diapers, latex gloves, and thickener powder for his water were stacked in the corner. And then came the bills. Every day, the mailbox was full of white envelopes. Hospital bills, ambulance fees, rehabilitation copays. Even with insurance, the costs were astronomical. I saw Aunt Sarah sitting at the kitchen table late at night, staring at a calculator, her face buried in her hands. "We have to sell the truck," she whispered to me one night. "And the boat. And maybe we have to refinance the house." 55 years of hard work, wiped out in less than a month. All because of a blood clot the size of a pebble. But the financial ruin was nothing compared to the loss of dignity. The hardest moment, the one that broke my heart into a million pieces, happened on the second night he was home. Uncle Mike needed to use the bathroom. In the past, he would just get up and go. Simple. But now, he was trapped in that bed. He tried to call out to Aunt Sarah, but remember, his voice was gone. He could only make those guttural sounds. Aunt Sarah was in the kitchen. She did not hear him over the sound of the dishwasher. He tried to hold it. He tried so hard. He used his good left hand to grip the bedrail until his knuckles turned white. Sweat poured down his face. But the stroke had damaged the nerves that controlled his bladder too. He could not hold it. When Aunt Sarah finally came into the room with a cup of tea, it was too late. The bedsheets were soaked. The smell of urine filled the small room. Uncle Mike was sobbing. Not loud, angry sobbing, but the quiet, shaking sobs of a man who has lost his self-respect. He refused to look at her. He turned his head to the wall, squeezing his eyes shut. He was the protector, the provider. And now, his wife had to clean him up like an infant. Aunt Sarah did not complain. She did not say a word. She just set the tea down, got a basin of warm water and a washcloth, and began to clean him. "It is okay, Mike," she soothed him, wiping his tears. "It is just an accident. We will fix it." I stood in the doorway, unable to move. I looked at the bedside table. There, sitting next to his lamp, was a picture of him from last year's barbecue. He was holding a beer, laughing, standing tall. And right next to that picture, was a bottle of Thicket water thickener. Because of the aspiration pneumonia caused by that water bottle on the 4th of July, his swallowing muscles were permanently damaged. He could not even drink regular water anymore. He would choke. Everything he drank had to be thickened to the consistency of honey. Imagine that. You are thirsty, dying for a cold glass of water, but you have to drink a thick, slime-like goop just to stay alive. That night, after Aunt Sarah had finally fallen asleep in the chair next to him, Uncle Mike waved me over. He looked at me with intense, desperate eyes. He pointed to his paralyzed leg. Then he pointed to his head. Then, he made a motion with his hand, like he was drinking from a bottle. And he shook his head violently. No, no, he remembered. He remembered Steve forcing the water down his throat. He remembered choking. He realized that the pneumonia, the complications, the extra weeks in the hospital, the damage to his throat. It was all because we didn't know better. He grabbed my hand with his strong left hand and squeezed it so hard it hurt. He looked deep into my soul and tried to speak. Tell. He struggled. Spittle flew from his lips. Tell them. He wanted me to warn people. He wanted his suffering to mean something. He did not want another family to lose everything because they thought a bottle of water could cure a stroke. That moment, right there in that dim room smelling of bleach and despair, is why I am telling you this story today. Uncle Mike paid the ultimate price for our ignorance. He is still with us, but the Mike we knew is gone. He is a prisoner in his own home, a prisoner in his own body. And every time I see him look out the window at his dusty truck, I wonder, if we had called 911 5 minutes earlier, if we had kept him N.P.O, nothing by mouth, would he be driving that truck today? Would he be laughing at his own jokes? The answer keeps me up at night. And it should keep you up too. Because the line between a scare and a tragedy is razor thin. And usually, that line is drawn by what you do in the first 10 minutes. So, what should you have done? What is the lesson here that costs $500,000 and a man's life? Let me break it down for you in the final part, so you never, ever have to feel the guilt that I feel every single day. Hello again, my friends. It has been 6 months since the ambulance took Uncle Mike away from his 4th of July barbecue. 6 months of rehab. 6 months of struggle. 6 months of learning how to live a new life. I visited Uncle Mike yesterday. The summer heat has faded, replaced by the crisp air of autumn. The Kenworth truck is gone. We sold it last week to pay for a new specialized wheelchair and a stair lift. Watching that truck drive away driven by a stranger was hard, but seeing Uncle Mike smile for the first time in months was worth it. He sat on the back porch, a blanket over his paralyzed legs. His speech is still very limited. He can say, yes, no, and thanks. But his mind? His mind is as sharp as ever. And he found a new way to be the captain of his ship. He pulled out a small whiteboard from his lap. With his left hand, the hand that used to be his weak one, he started to write. It took him a long time. The marker squeaked against the board. His hand trembled with effort. He wrote 3 words. No water, ever. He tapped the board hard, looking at me with intense eyes. He wants me to be his voice. He wants me to tell you what he cannot say. So please, listen closely. This is the legacy Uncle Mike wants to leave behind. It is not about how many miles he drove, but about how many lives he might save. First, the water mistake. This is the most critical lesson from our tragedy. When someone is having a stroke, their brain disconnects from their throat muscles. The flap that protects their windpipe, the epiglottis, might not close. When you give them water, pills, or food, you are not helping them. You are drowning them. That water goes straight into the lungs, causing aspiration pneumonia. It turns a survivable stroke into a deadly infection. Uncle Mike wants you to remember, if you see a drooping face. N.P.O. That is a medical term for nothing per oral. Nothing by mouth. Not a drop. Just call 911 and wait. Second, the F.A.S.T rule. Uncle Mike wrote F.A.S.T on his board. Do not ignore the signs like we did. Do not blame the heat. Do not blame the beer. F is for face. Ask them to smile. Does one side droop, like Uncle Mike's did? A is for arms. Ask them to raise both arms. Does one drift downward, or is one paralyzed? S is for speech. Ask them to repeat a simple phrase. Is their speech slurred, or strange, or are they silent? T is for time. If you see any of these signs, it is time to call 911 immediately. Note the time the symptoms started. That time last known well is the most important question the doctors will ask. Third, the silent killer. Uncle Mike was healthy on the outside, but inside, his blood pressure was a ticking time bomb. He never checked it. He thought he was too tough for high blood pressure. He was wrong. High blood pressure does not hurt until it kills you. Please, go to the pharmacy today. Use the free machine. Check your numbers. If it is high, take the pill. Uncle Mike would give anything, absolutely anything, to go back and take that tiny pill every morning instead of sitting in this wheelchair today. After he finished talking to me through his whiteboard, Uncle Mike did something that made me proud. He pointed to the street, where a young neighbor was washing his car. He waved his left hand, awkwardly but enthusiastically. The neighbor waved back. Uncle Mike turned to me and wrote one last word, alive. Yes, he lost his truck. He lost his voice. He lost his freedom, but he is alive. He is still here to hug his wife with one arm. He is still here to see his grandkids grow up. He is still here to teach me how to be a better man. And in a way, he is stronger now than he ever was before. Because it takes a lot of muscle to drive a truck, but it takes a hell of a lot more courage to rebuild a life from zero. As I left his house, I heard a siren in the distance. Before, that sound was just background noise to me. Now, I know what it means. It means someone's life is changing forever. It means a family is about to enter the storm. I prayed that whoever called that ambulance knows what you know now. I prayed they didn't give water. I prayed they called fast. My friends, thank you for listening to Uncle Mike's story. Please, do not let this story end here. Share it with your husband, your wife, your parents. Teach your children the F.A.S.T rule. Become a hero in your own home. Because the best way to honor Uncle Mike is to make sure that at your next family barbecue, everyone stays safe, and the only thing being grilled is the burgers. This is the end of our story, but hopefully, the beginning of a safer future for you and your loved ones. Take care of yourselves, check your pressure, and remember, when it comes to stroke, time is brain. Goodbye for now, and God bless.